Hello, everyone. It's Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. It is now the 23rd of July, 2023. Click on the subscribe button down here in the lower right to subscribe to future episodes, and then also in the far upper right, the notification bell to be notified when they are released. Today's topic is a review of the new movie on Oppenheimer. It's really not a Civil War topic, but it's something that I have an interest in and I have researched in the past. I'd like to say a few words about it because I'm also interested in researching the technology that was used during the Civil War and the inventions that were made during the Civil War. And we'll get to that toward the end of this. But let me go ahead and pull up, well, actually, I'll just read the remarks here. Even though it is not a Civil War topic, I review the new Oppenheimer movie for three reasons. First, YouTube has a far better interpretation as a scripted docudrama that is available for free. Second, like most A-bomb history film narratives, the weapon in yesterday's movie is completed in kind of a mysterious manner that could be better explained. Third, Christopher Nolan's much anticipated interpretation is unfortunately corrupted with political correctness. Now, regarding the first point, the British Broadcasting Corporation released a 7-episode scripted drama in 1980, which is presently available on YouTube. So just do a search for it, a Google search, BBC Oppenheimer 1980 scripted drama, and it should come up. The longer time run enables fuller explanations of what actually happened in terms of the technical developments as well as the interpersonal relations. The characters are also better portrayed, especially Sam Waterston's Oppenheimer from the 1980 version, and who shows arrogance and nervous mannerisms that dominated Oppenheimer's personality. Now, regarding the second point, the movie fails to clarify that the scientists developed two types of atomic bombs during World War II, uranium-235 and plutonium. Now, there was a third type also developed. If you watch the movie, you'll hear them talk about it, the hydrogen bomb. But that actually happened after the war. Just to repeat, during the war, there were two types of atomic bombs developed, uranium-235 and plutonium. Now, America made only one uranium-235 bomb because only small quantities of the isotope were available. Moreover, it was difficult to separate the U-235 from the U-238, which is 130 times more abundant. Separation required a factory at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, with thousands of employees. The electromagnetic process consumes 7% of America's entire daily consumption of electricity, much of it generated by the Tennessee Valley Authority hydroelectric plants. It required so much wire that the project exhausted its ration of copper, which was a commodity in big competitive demand for brass shell casings during the war for artillery and rifles and pistols. They needed the brass for the shell casing, so there was a big competition for the copper. As a result, the Oak Ridge people requisitioned 440,000 troy ounces of silver. That's 15,000 tons of silver to use as a conductor with inside the wiring that they used in that electromagnetic separation process for separating U-235 from U-238. They got 15,000 tons of silver from the U.S. Treasury, which they borrowed in return. Now, plutonium is the other type of bomb developed, and it was a key breakthrough because it could be separated from impurity elements chemically instead of electromagnetically. The electromagnetic process relied upon tiny differences in the atomic weights of the isotopes of a given element, such as, say, uranium. The separations could only be accumulated in concentrations large and rich enough, in other words, pure enough, for a bomb after many repetitions of the process. To get more purification, they had to repeat the process over and over and over again, maybe to get higher purification and higher quantity of U-235. In contrast, the plutonium chemical separation enabled the formation of an atomic bomb production lines with plutonium explosives at a dedicated plant in Hanford, Washington. So plutonium bombs could be mass produced or actually produced on a production line, whereas the uranium-235 bomb had to be produced on kind of one at a time. Would have taken additional months to get an additional U-235 bomb. Plutonium, they could get, I think, about 2 a month initially, and then as the production rate went up, it became much more. And they did that at a production facility in Hanford, Washington. So there are production facilities in Hanford for the plutonium bombs and in Oak Ridge for the uranium bomb. Additionally, the need for plutonium required another invention, and that invention was the nuclear reactor, which utility companies later used to generate electricity. But during the war, the nuclear reactors were used to produce plutonium, to manufacture plutonium, a previously unknown element. Plutonium was a downstream byproduct of the reactor's spent uranium-235 fuel. In other words, as the reactor used the fuel of 235 uranium to generate electricity or whatever they were going to use it for, that fuel, that waste would cause the surrounding uranium-238 to transform into plutonium over time. And it happened fairly rapidly, just a matter of days. So once it settled in as plutonium, I think it was pretty good. It's pretty good for thousands of years to stay that way. Now, that meant with a plutonium bomb, America would be able to have a steady flow of atomic bombs available. Without it, they would have dropped the uranium bomb. It would have taken months to create a second one. But with the plutonium bomb production line on stream, they think they were able to begin with about 2 a month and 3 a month, 4 a month, and started going up steadily. America would not have been able to drop the second bomb on Nagasaki only 3 days after it dropped the first bomb on Hiroshima. The first bomb, the uranium bomb, was dropped on Hiroshima on August 3rd. 3 days later, they dropped the first plutonium bomb on Nagasaki, 3 days after they dropped the uranium bomb on Hiroshima. And they could have continued, so that's why the Japanese surrendered. The Japanese finally believed, well, whatever the Americans have invented, they can mass produce it. Now, a third point as for the third point I want to discuss, that the movie did bow to political correctness by placing women and blacks in roles that they really did not play during the historical events. Many women were depicted as Los Alamos scientists, but there were few, if any, historically there. Predictably, these women were portrayed as outspoken pacifists with a sense of superior morality to the men who were, obsessed with toxic masculinity and wanting to blow things up. A black scientist also appeared on the screen when the team activated the first experimental nuclear reactor at the University of Chicago in December 1942, December 2nd, almost exactly a year after the attack on Pearl Harbor. So it's doubtful that there was any black man there on that team. To be accurate, the scientific team, as it was actually composed, was possibly exclusively white males, young white males. Especially prominent were Ashkenazi Jews, such as Oppenheimer himself. Now, to be sure, at least one female scientist who was not recognized in the movie but probably because she did not go to Los Alamos, was Lise Meitner. Lise was in Sweden when she reviewed the work of a former German colleague and realized that he had split the atom in a scientific experiment in 1938. She caught that and discerned what had happened. He couldn't understand his results. They were kind of different than what he expected. She said in late 1938, well, what you've done is you've actually split the atom that you were bombarding with neutrons. And then in 1939, she described the process as fission, as it's known today, was then described as fission for the first time ever. So let me just conclude with saying that narratives of accomplishment create heroes. When we see stories of American history of accomplishment, we end up with heroes. But when we get narratives of victimhood, we create resentment. We actually tear down what we're trying to build here as a country. And I think in the sense that the political correctness that is in this movie does some of that. Now, I want to proceed to this book, my latest book, a novel called Firepower. And it's about the development of repeating rifles during the Civil War. Prior to the Civil War, two different types of repeating rifles were actually patented before the war, but they really didn't get into the fighting in any meaningful sense until the last 12 months of the war. The thing that made the difference was the Battle of Gettysburg. When the Battle of Gettysburg happened, the Union went out into the battlefield and scavenged 24,000 muskets from the battlefield, and they discovered that 3/4 of them were already loaded with, they were loaded. And and I think at least half of them were loaded with more than one round, so they were fouled. They couldn't be used. And as a result of that, the manufacturer of the Spencer repeater was able to get a personal audience with Abraham Lincoln. You know, the battle was in July. He got a personal audience with Lincoln in August, and then in September, Abraham Lincoln replaced the general who was in charge of the United States Ordnance Bureau. And here's the interesting thing in the plot that I put together is I'm taking historical facts, connecting the dots, and creating a story that could explain how this happened. The head of the Federal Ordnance Department was a general named James Ripley. He had a nephew in the Confederate Army who was a general named Roswell Ripley. The Confederate Secret Service was able to learn through Roswell things that would enable them to blackmail the James Ripley, who was head of the Union Ordnance Bureau, in order to discourage him from introducing the repeating rifles. What this book does is it describes how that blackmail happened and how it was ultimately overcome. But that's the mystery of this. The book is, I think, $19. If you'd like to get an autographed copy, just email me, Phil at Philip Lee at Phil_Lee, Leigh at me.com. And if you're here in the United States, I'll cover the postage. You can also get it, if you don't want it autographed, you can get it at Amazon. I think it's $16 at Amazon. Okay, that's our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you next time.